Welcome to The Outlet, where we keep you plugged in to everything energy. To lead the charge, here's your host, Tom Glanzer.
Well, welcome to The Outlet, NorthWestern Energy's podcast. We call it The Outlet because we plug into a lot of things, but today we're not really plugging in per se. We'll talk a little electricity, but we're going to talk about natural gas, and we brought the man, the myth, the legend. He is the lead guitarist for ZZ Top. No, wait, that isn't the lead guitar. That is Reed McKee, my longtime friend who has a longtime beard. Reed McKee is in our development group here at NorthWestern Energy. Welcome to The Outlet, Reed.
Thank you, Tom. Good.
I always
good
feel
to
like
have me.
good to have me. I always
Good
feel
to
like
have me.
whenever we're on Zoom, I always feel like I have to explain the beard to everyone. And Reed obviously is forever on two wheels. He's a motorcycle guy from day one, but this beard came about in about COVID time is when we really saw the beard come out, and now it's just a part of who you are, pretty much.
Well, it all started with a challenge from the CEO that did refer to me as ZZ Top, and I thought, well, I'll show you. And then since then, I've had 4 grandchildren that only know Grandpa with a beard, so it has stayed. I'm afraid to shave it because they may not recognize Grandpa anymore.
I never thought about that portion of it. Miles wouldn't know who Grandpa was if you shave off the beard, because it's been 4 or 5 years now, and that's how we know Reed McKee, and it's part of who we are here at NorthWestern Energy, and we love having you aboard. Reed, can you just give us your background a little bit of kind of how you went from the engineer to what you're doing now, your career here at Northwestern?
Yeah. I've been an engineer, or started as an engineer on the gas side of our business back in 94, so 30 plus years working with the utility. I started on the operating side of the business. We took on kind of a learning curve, moved from gas to gas and electric in our engineering, and I served in a couple different locations, Huron, Yankton, and had many different responsibilities on the operating side of the business. With my last duty assignment was the assistant general manager for our South Dakota and Nebraska properties. So all of the area managers reported through me. Back about 8-9 years ago, the company did ask if I would step into a different role and to help grow the business, knowing that our industry was changing and that a lot of opportunities were out there. Asked me to lead up the business development group. So I've been doing that since 2015, 2016, somewhere in that time frame. And it's our industry right now, Tom, is just absolutely exciting in my words. In my world, the previous, utilities basically got a C grade every time you reached over and turned the light on because it was just expected. Today, a lot more challenges with your sources of how the energy industry is going to work, a lot more pushback on what's important to us as humans and the planet. So some of the renewable opportunities and so forth that we've looked at. So I'm in an exciting point in my career getting to dig into what's available and what opportunities that we have to help customers solve their energy needs.
And so when RFPs, requests for proposals, come in from the state, Reed would be one of the first ones in our company to see a lot of those. And it would fall onto his desk, and he would be the one that says, oh, yeah, we could maybe do that. We maybe couldn't. And I always call you the no man, because whenever I have a stupid idea, you bring me back to earth and tell me, Tom, that's not possible. You need to think with an engineer brain, not your creative nerd brain, So, but there's some things that have been happening lately that are just in the industry, that we have RFPs come in that they need 70 megawatts of power, they need 80 megawatts, they need 120 to 2. The industry is just changed to where the demand for electricity is at an all-time high, and there's not enough generation to kind of cover what's being asked for. How do you sleep at night, Reed, when you know that need is out there?
We've got others in the organization that actually have to live and breathe and study that all the time. The piece that you omitted there is in the changing, the requests are there, but even on the flip side, society is thinking of energy in a different way And some of the reliable sources may be frowned upon today, i.e. coal as an example. And so when the industry is talking about coal going away in the future, you have to be able to backfill to serve the needs of customers. Right along the same lines or same side as how you brought it up, with the demand for EVs or data centers seem to be the latest buzzword right now. And traditionally, large customers come in and they were looking for what we considered a large customer, 6, 10 megawatt. Those requests today come in and they normally start and ask for 500 megawatts. And then they say, oh, yeah, but we can start maybe at 50 to 100 megawatt. But we truly want to grow to a gigawatt, which is huge for NorthWestern, kind of a family-oriented, smaller in scale compared to a lot of our industry.
Hold on real quick. Just let's do the megawatt math for people, because sometimes I know some people will understand it. Like, what's our load in a town of Mitchell, South Dakota? What would an average load be there?
You would ask me a tough question specific. Let's break it down to South Dakota. Our South
Do South
Dakota
Dakota.
we peak at about 350 megawatts, and in terms of customer size, we're about 65, 70,000 residential and small business customers that we serve, that makes up that 350 megawatt. So I think where you're going in the scale, when somebody's asking for 500, they're asking us to more than double where we're at today and find the energy needs for their business.
Exactly. And so when you think about, okay, I put out Mitchell, but if you put out, say, the 2 megawatt and the 6 megawatt loads that we used to get, that were like, oh, if you get that load, that'd be a really good load. That'd be some of that stuff now, it's like that's just almost like, oh, that would be easy to actually try to engineer something that would make that work. I need 70 right away, and then I need another 140 within 24 to 48 months. It's like, you got to get your engineering hat on, and then you start looking at what we're spending on things like this anymore. I mean, just to put up some generation takes you 4 to 5 years, between the planning and the construction. And you're looking at, $95 million for maybe 60 to 70 megawatts. And that's not probably even feasible right now in 2025, because the prices have gone up since we built our last couple of assets.
Yeah, and so my group's kind of been challenged with looking at some of that, and with that, one, you're identifying the source. Where are we going to get the generation to actually get the supply to the line? Well, how do you get it to the line to the customer? Now you're talking your backbone, your transmission system, a reinvestment in that, because the existing is congested or fully subscribed, some of the different terms that people will use. So you have a multifaceted development project to go from generation, transmission, and maybe even some distribution, but typically a customer of that size is probably going to stay and come right off of the transmission system at a higher voltage for their needs.
Right. And we're starting to look at different things. It's no secret. We're exploring nuclear, and that, if that's the future, that is the future. And, you try to get a balanced portfolio of, some wind, some solar, all of that, but you look at the amount of energy that is needed right now, and that's just South Dakota, eastern South Dakota. We know what we know. There's got to be hundreds of other places that are looking at this demand for big time power to keep up with, and it is data centers and AI and things like that. And it's an interesting part of your job right now, and it's interesting to see where that will be in the next 10 years.
Yeah. And you mentioned South Dakota, but we've got the same conversations going on the western half of our service territory in Montana as well. Out there, I think our peak is somewhere in the 1,450 megawatt area. But you look for somebody that's going to want to come on at 500 and grow to a gigawatt. Again, we're going to surpass what our current peaks are. So we have all the same challenges on that side. So as a whole, makes for pretty busy throughout Northwestern looking at the future. And I'm glad you identified the time frame for development when it's generation, when it's transmission assets. These are not 1 to 2 year projects. These are probably 5 to 7, 8 years.
Yeah, and if you get into some of them, I mean, you could be looking at a 10-year project before anything hits the ground. And these places need this power like I think they would build right now if they could. You think about the Googles of the world and Meta and things like that, and how aggressive they are with what they're doing and how they have, not to mention they also have the liquid assets, the financial ability to do a lot of that. And that's the other thing that you look at. We're not a big utility. We're a pretty small utility when you think about the service territory is huge. Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska, we are a big footprint, but we're not huge numbers wise. And so financially, those things, we had Crystal Lale on the show not too long ago, and she's our CEO, and I can only imagine some of the things that she's having to figure out financially for the future.
I know you like to give her a promotion, but I think Brian might.
CFO. Did I say CEO? I meant CFO.
CFO.
Yes.
She takes care of all the
Yeah.
money. She's got the purse strings, so we
Yep.
like to take care of Crystal.
Yeah.
Make
Yep.
sure we're getting her what she needs. But yeah, a lot of challenges, a lot of big investments going to happen there. Number of our discussions are obviously we like to strategically put ourselves in a position to be a partner with our customer to come up with a solution and work through to resolve their energy need and get there. And that's the only way to do it, Tom. You're exactly right. It's tough to have a balance sheet when we're talking the scale that we are in developing these new opportunities.
And I know we call this the outlet, and we talk about electricity and things like that. But obviously, this is one of those shows where we're going to talk about natural gas a little bit, because pretty interesting concept that you've been involved in the last probably 2 years, bringing in renewable natural gas. First off, I think I was in our Yankton office about a week before we started renewable natural gas flowing into our gas system. And one of our gas guys said, "What is renewable natural gas? I don't even understand what you're talking about." And so even inside the buildings, we had some folks that were like, "I've never been aware of this. I don't know how it works. You got to tell me what's going on." So can you explain to us, and this is South Dakota, Montana, Nebraska. We know cattle, so we know what cattle, the output of cattle on a cattle farm is, but just tell us about renewable natural gas and how it all works.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and I'm probably going to back up a little bit because this was an opportunity. I got really excited, and you let me share kind of my background. I was kind of born on the gas side of the business, and so when I got asked to move into this role, and believe it or not, it was a little longer back than the 2 years you described, Tom. 2018, I think, was the first meeting that I ever had. Our energy industry is so unique in they're not necessarily competitors. They're since we all have assigned service territories and so forth, but another utility from across the state actually had brought a developer out to introduce him to me, to Northwestern, with the interest of RNG. And like you just described, obviously at that time I was thinking the same thing. What is RNG? But the other exciting part of it, as I learned more about it, if you step back and you think about where the industry's been, you talk about the outlet, you talk about the electric, all of the renewable sources such as wind and solar have been front and center in our world for quite a while. You never heard anything on the natural gas side along that lines. So along comes renewable natural gas and the opportunity. And what it is basically methane. Methane is what is a major component of natural gas. I like to describe it as no different than the wine industry. You have a very finely aged wine that's very enjoyable. That's natural gas. Then you get the California wine that was manufactured last year, very good wine. I could give you some names. That's renewable natural gas. It just hasn't fermented in the ground as long as natural
I've never
gas.
thought of look at this, just breaking news. You just blew my mind because that's I guess I've never thought of it that way, that the natural gas is just a little bit deeper in the earth and fermented and older, and the methane is yeah, that's
Organic,
last year's grapes.
digested, get the gas out and clean it up and send it into the pipeline. And that's really the easiest way to think about it is taking the waste product of the cattle, running it through a digester, getting the microbials all excited and whatnot, and the gas comes out, capturing it, scrubbing it, making it into pipeline quality gas. The requirements that we have for it to enter our system through our receipt station is really no different than the requirements we have at a wellhead where they're mining for natural gas out of the ground, where they're going to clean it up, make sure that it meets all the specifications the
Okay,
constituent.
so that's something I didn't know. When we get natural gas, does it get scrubbed? The natural gas, I mean, it doesn't come out ready to burn, right?
It could be wet gas, so it's going to have a lot of your heavy hydrocarbons, some of your products that could roll over into propane or into the natural gas. I mean, it's petroleum based, kind of where it's born. Typically, natural gas is in and around the petroleum as they're drilling wells for it. So a receipt station there is a receipt station here to do the same thing when they take it through the production process to make it into pipeline quality gas in order for us to inject into the system.
So can you describe kind of how our supplier group works to get that methane to us and then how we inject it into the system and kind of our different systems that we have on our South Dakota side right now?
Okay. And I'll talk about it kind of maybe in roles or in strategy when this came about and how we wanted to think about it at Northwestern. And there are programs, federal programs that have credits that incentivize developers to go out and develop these projects. Okay. When they approach the utility, they're looking for a home to get the gas into the pipeline system, the commodity, okay, the molecule, I'm going to say. With that, the credits that come along with it, there's a couple different that really promoted it. The LCFS, which is the low carbon fuel standards. This is actually a program out of California. And then the RINs, and I always forget the acronym. Basically, it's a renewable credit for natural gas. But between those two, they have a value, and that's how the developer is looking at and developing their projects. The molecule itself, the natural gas molecule, has to get into a system that if you were to look at it on paper, you could see if they're qualifying for the LCFS credit in California. Mapping wise, the grid of pipes could get it there. The way we describe that is the producer makes the molecule, attaches, we'll call it a little green backpack that actually has the renewable credit attached to it. When it gets placed into the pipeline, they take the backpack, send it to California, they attach it to an actual molecule there because the actual molecule that was developed is going to burn right here in South Dakota. Typically, they are going to burn closest to the source. And that's how the credits get passed along. Another way, the interesting way that I heard somebody describe that is, you're going to go on a vacation to Europe. So you take cash from your savings account or out of your checking account, put it in your savings account at the ATM. The dollars go in. When you get to Europe, you go up to the machine and pull the dollars out, right? So likewise, this is that green backpack, similar analogy on how it gets there. The intent of these projects and the way we put them together was to look at the physical assets to allow for the developer to get their gas injected onto our system. Meaning NorthWestern was never going to own the molecule. NorthWestern, in our role as distribution or transmission, in both cases, we're moving the commodity. Now, our supply arm does buy natural gas for our customers, and it's built into some of our bundled rates. In this relationship, they were going to be a transport customer, meaning that the gas would just move on our system, and therefore we would collect our revenue from rate for moving or allowing them to move it on. Since then, some of those same developers have approached our supply arm to sell the molecule. So instead of us going to some of the wellheads and getting our supply, i.e. some of our gas comes out of Canada as an example, Luke Hansen, who is our gas supply manager, would go or would work up a deal to purchase or acquire the gas at hub prices or lower. So it's good for our customers as well.
I think that's a key thing, is that the renewable is at hub prices or lower. So for lack of a better term, market price.
Yeah. Yep. No additional cost to NorthWestern or our customers.
Yep.
It's competitive with what you can get it for on the market. And again, the developer's interest is those credits. That's really what backs and pays for the project, makes those successful.
So how is it going so far? And what kind of numbers? I mean, is there a way to gauge kind of like this has been very successful right away, or we're working our way into it?
As we talked, I said that the RNG thought process or project and starting to work through the program was 2018. So it was most all of your larger projects like that. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon in order to get those developed, to get those worked through. The developer themselves are working through and learning different parts of the process as they go. So our actual first injection into the system was February of 24. So about a year ago was the first molecule from the RNG projects that hit NorthWestern system. We actually have 11 total contracts that are related to RNG. 9 of those are dairy related. I'm going to correct that. 8 of those are dairy related. 1 of those is actually an indoor feedlot in South Dakota. And I'll expand on that a little bit. Another one, we have a RNG relationship for a landfill in Montana. And one of the things that I anticipate seeing more of is that industry is starting to mature and look at different feedstock in order to make RNG. In Nebraska, we actually have a waste or wastewater treatment at I believe it's a beef processing plant that will be injecting RNG into our Nebraska system. So 11 total.
It's not all just cow manure anymore.
No.
That's interesting.
We're having, that's why I say is that one's probably a better example of some of the recent conversations of interest in different feedstock to develop the RNG from. So of the South Dakota projects, we serve, help me out, Tom, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 customers in South Dakota. Residential. Then we've got our commercial. We never own the credit the renewable credit. So I have to be careful how I speak to it because we're not laying claim to it. But we do know the molecule itself is going to be burned in South Dakota. So I think it's a cleaner environment because of it. But that's equivalent to the amount of RNG we have contracted in South Dakota is equivalent to about of what's online today. It would serve the equivalent gas that 2/3 of our South Dakota customers use, residential customers use.
And of course, you can't track where that molecule ends up. We don't know if it goes to, this person's house or that person's house, but it's on the system. It's being used. It gets mixed in with the other gas and it burns just the same.
Yep.
That's
Yep. You can't tell the difference and talking about BTU content of the gas, that's really where you get the heating value from. And if you look at regular natural gas, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of I'm going to call it 1,100 BTUs per cubic foot. The RNG, I think when we first started talking, people were talking in that 900, 950 range. But actually it's coming in over 1,000 in most cases with the relationships we have. So the science behind those, and NorthWestern doesn't get involved in that, but the developers have really honed in on producing quality gas that's very equivalent to.
Yeah, it's incredible. And if you're with us right now and you're lost, you should have listened in science class back in the day because that's some of those times you start talking about BTUs and you start thinking about how you measure the burning ability of a molecule. This is pretty incredible, and it's an amazing thing that we were able to put on our system now. And it's one of those things you know, we're just in the right spot because we have so many dairies around us. We have a lot of cattle around us, and so there's a lot of opportunity for. And then in Montana with the landfill, that's interesting too. How do they cap and contain that?
And I'll kind of digress a little bit. The landfill in Montana is a lot of the developers were talking about landfills or in landfill opportunities, and it takes a fairly large landfill in order for them to put different wells in to capture the gas, as all of our garbage is, it's just I'll call it not a man-made digester, a natural digester in the ground. And you don't know what goes into that stream. And so there's a lot more testing to make sure that they're stripping out what we call the nasties or things that wouldn't be safe to get into the system. But it's just a piping system that's going to collect any of the gas, the rotting food, anything that will break down, decompose, so forth. The byproduct is going to be methane. And so it's a system, a process then to strip out, like I say, any of the constituents that aren't typically found in pipeline quality gas. And most landfills across the nation, I think, that's an older technology, I'm going to call it, that they've been capturing that gas. As an example, here in South Dakota, Sioux Falls would be the largest landfill in the state. That is actually contracted by one of the ethanol plants, and they use the methane from the landfill in part of their process in creating the ethanol. So
the further we go along, the further we figure things out, and that's why, as we were talking before, with the electric generation and things of that nature, it's not just kind of status quo for your utility. You have to be kind of cutting edge, and we appreciate what you've been doing for NorthWestern Energy for all these years. And you're not going to be one of those guys that just kind of gets to drift off into retirement. You're going to be learning up until the very last day of your career. So that's you've always had a learner's mind, though, I think, and you've always been one of those guys that just wants to continue to go on like that. So, Reed, thanks so much for coming on.
Tom, thanks for having me. It's been fun, and if you guys couldn't tell, this stuff does get me excited. Tom's exactly right. I'm constantly learning and looking for the new challenge or the opportunity that will work out for NorthWestern and our customers. It's so rewarding to satisfy a customer by filling their energy need and coming up with a solution.
And it's so important. It's paramount in today's world. So thank you to Reed McKee, our guest today on The Outlet. Lori Nelson is our executive producer. She was in charge of lighting today and making sure that Reed's beard looked amazing. So Lori, thank you for making all those things happen today. Be sure to check us out on Spotify. We're on YouTube. Listen to all the old episodes and the new episodes coming up. Just make it one of your favorites and plug into The Outlet at NorthWestern Energy. Thanks a lot. Have a good day, everybody.
That's a wrap on this week's episode of The Outlet. For more information and weekly energy updates, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or visit northwesternenergy.com.